Because when we wrote that song, Morgan didn't have a deal. And so it's like it had to like work its way to him and or vice versa. I don't know.
Yeah. The timing had to be right.
Yeah. It's like just because the song doesn't get cut, like the artist may not even be in town yet.
What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Welcome to this week's episode of 10-Year Town. Before we get started, just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody who has been subscribing and leaving a rating for the podcast. We appreciate you. Keep it going. Also, if you are an aspiring songwriter or songwriter curious, maybe, we have a Q&A episode that we're going to be doing here in a few weeks, and you can submit questions for that at 10yeartown.com. Today's guest is hit songwriter Brad Clawson. We're going to be talking about how he wrote some of his biggest hits, including Up Down by Morgan Wallen and FGL and Happy Does by Kenny Chesney. Brad is a truly amazing songwriter, an even better human, and I'm so happy to have him on today. Please welcome Brad Clawson.
Oh, I didn't wear my artist clothes today because...
Oh, you're fine. You may want to switch, I don't know if you care, but you may want to switch the ears.
Switch them?
Yeah, this is the cable.
So I look like I know what I'm doing?
No, it's just going to be draped across you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just trying to be helpful.
I got water all over me. I'm a mess, dude.
You're struggling, bro.
I know. I was like worried I was going to be late, and then...
You're not late.
I'm not. Well...
It starts when you get here, buddy.
Well, but then I have to go to the baseball game after this, so I'm like...
Yeah. What time you got to be out?
Like 5.
5.
At the latest.
Oh, yeah. We'll be good. Are
so,
we...
you know how traffic is.
Are we rolling?
You are, sir.
Okay.
Do I sit a certain way? I don't even know.
Dude, you're great.
Great, just like that.
It's mostly audio.
Got my old work sweatshirt on, like we're good.
Staff.
Good.
We're good. Brad Clawson, welcome.
Troy, hey man,
welcome. So I start this thing off. I gotta ask, how long have you been in town?
Moved here July of 2005.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that 18 years?
Not the math guy. That's why I'm doing
that
music.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this year was the year that I've lived in Nashville longer than I lived in Texas.
Okay.
So I'm struggling with, am I from Nashville now?
No, you're always from Texas, bro.
Yeah.
You can't.
You're right.
You can't wash that off.
That's right.
At least that's what I tell myself. I have the same fear sometimes.
It's in the blood.
It's in the blood. I feel like Texas is a core part of my identity.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter that. Maybe people really don't care.
It gets watered down, but it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Did you go to school here? I kind of forget that.
Okay. So I went to MTSU.
Yeah.
Studied Parks and Recreation Management.
Okay.
I took one music business class, and I was like, this is insane. There were like 200 kids in there, and it was one of like 20 classes.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the world? And so I was like, nah, we good. And so I was like, what do I love? I love music and I love the outdoors. So I was like, well, let's go do the outdoor stuff, because you can still play music or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was wanting to be like a park ranger or a game warden or something like that. Because I was like, I want to carry a gun, but I don't want to be a cop. And so like...
awesome.
Seems a little more low key, but the more I look into it, the more like Wild West it is to be
a park ranger
or even a game warden, because you're on your own.
Yeah.
And like game warden, everybody you walk up on has a gun of some sort. So It's like,
and they're probably not that stoked to see you most of the time.
No, never. So yeah, but it's all good because we ended up here.
Yeah. How did you go from maybe game warden, maybe park ranger to songwriter?
Well, so I'd always like played music, was in bands in high school. including the marching band.
Yeah.
I also played sports. Wasn't just a band nerd.
Okay.
So,
You were cool. You were a cool band guy.
Dual threat.
Yeah.
Student. And so like I'd always played music, always done music. You know, my dad did music, so it was just kind of like was always around it growing up. And so it was just kind of like a fun thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
And so like sort of wrote songs, but not really, until once we got to, I did like 2 years in MTSU. And then when my mom had moved to Nashville, our next door neighbor was the Tenpenny family.
Okay.
So Mitchell Tenpenny.
Yeah.
And so we had become buds. Him and my sister were friends. Like they would carpool to school and stuff like that. But we'd always been really tight just because he also loved to play music. And so we would do, play basketball and then go home and play guitar. And then we'd go play football or skateboard or whatever. Like it was always just getting into something. So whenever he came to MTSU, we were roommates.
Oh,
so
wow.
we ended up doing that. And so when he was a songwriting major. And so he was having to write songs for his classes and everything.
Yeah.
I think he took a class where they had to write like one song a week.
Okay.
And so he'd always be like, hey man, help me finish like this song. I have this, or whatever. And so I was like, okay. So we'd sit down and we'd write a song. And so it kind of started like that. And then it turned into, there's a little spot called Three Brothers in Murfreesboro, and they had an open mic night every Wednesday.
Okay.
And so then we started going to the open mic night and playing songs. And so we're like, oh, we should write a new song so we can play at the open mic night, so we're not playing the same songs every time.
Yeah.
So we'd like get up there and we'd play. And that's sort of how it started, I guess, when I was like fully writing songs, like start to finish, and not like because like the bands I was in high school were all like punk rock, like Green Day, Foo Fighters, Blink-182, like that type stuff.
Totally.
Which those songs don't make any sense most of the time. So it was just like,
they don't.
Instead of just saying cool stuff, you actually had to like string sentences and thoughts together and make it one cohesive. It's like, oh, it all has to like be a story, not necessarily, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So that's sort of like where it started, I guess, was in college. And then I finished school, tried to find a job, couldn't find a job. So I went back to school, because what do you do when you can't find a job?
Just
you go get your master's degree.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, and it actually timed out pretty perfect because Mitchell had 2 years of school left. So I did 2 years of grad school. And
for what?
Parks and Recreation Management.
Okay.
Dog.
All right.
I was like, had 2 years left. So I did all my classwork, and I was like, I'm going to take a semester off before I write my thesis. And Mitchell was like, hey man, I just recorded a bunch of songs that we wrote, going to do an independent record, going to go do a little radio tour to all the small little radio stations,
Yeah.
The indicator stations or whatever. He's like, come play guitar for me. I was like, let's do it. And then I never went back to school. I
never finished.
Never opened up that like folder on my computer that said thesis on it ever again.
That's so funny. I never knew that.
So that was sort of like dipping my toes into it, because then he signed a pub deal, and the other guys we were hanging out with and writing, like Andy Albert and Jordan Walker and Ernest and all those guys, started getting pub deals, and I was like, well, like why am I was like, I'm already kind of like in this circle, like we're doing it, like like I'm already writing with these guys, so like so I kind of buckled down, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And so that was where the journey begins, I guess.
Yeah. That's incredible. How long did it take? Like, so you decide, you're going to do this, and then how long did it take to get like your first publishing deal?
So that was, probably like 2013.
Okay.
Late 2012, early 2013. And that was kind of always my thing, was like, I love music. I do love it. But at the same time, I've seen like it can be a heartbreak industry as much as it can be like a dream come true.
Sure.
So I was like, man, I don't want to, so I was kind of scared, honestly.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to give it 3 years. And if I don't, to get like a pub deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm just going to buckle down, write songs. I was was valeting cars on the weekends, working at an outdoor store at like in the evenings, and just trying to write during the day.
Yeah.
Doing all that. And it's funny because I was like, you know, doing it. Like, and some days I'd wake up and be like, what am I doing? Like, I'm absolutely miserable working these terrible jobs, like absolutely broke as could be. And just like, you know, and all my friends were starting to have success and get cuts and things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
super happy for them. But at the same time, like, like, dang it, man, you know, like,
Yeah. When's my turn?
yeah, you know, just trying to be patient, but at the same time, like getting frustrated. And so it's like, so anyways, like that was going on. And, so like December was like the 3-year mark,
Okay.
like December 2015. So I guess it was 2012.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, like December happened. And I was like, okay, like we have, like nothing happened. Like, you know, no phone calls. I'd sent out a bunch of CDs, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And just nothing had happened. And I was like, all right. I was like, I guess come after the new year, I guess I'll start looking for a new job. You know, I kind of like had that conversation with myself, and it sort of sucked, but at the same time it was like, okay, like we, you know, starting the new chapter, kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And like January 2nd, I get a call from this lady. Her name is Jenny Johnson. She's like, hey, I got one of your CDs from Michael Martin. It's been on my desk for months. I've been meaning to call you. I'd love to have a meeting.
Wow.
And I was just
It pulled you right
Music
back
City,
in.
just sucking you right back in. So I went and took that meeting, and then from there, I met Jeff Carlton, who hooked me up with a couple other meetings, and the ball just kind of got rolling right there. And I think I signed my deal like officially in July or August that summer. So I mean, it was like another 6 months. But,
but that was enough. The phone call, was enough.
I got the nibble. Yeah.
Yeah. It always does that.
That's what I always say. I was like, this town always gives you just enough to keep you going.
Just a little carrot.
Like, whether it's a hold or somebody liking your song or maybe a cut or whatever.
Absolutely.
As soon as you think like, man, maybe it's time to move on. So,
sucks you back in.
Right back. Yeah.
So was this first deal? Have you been with Tape Room the whole time?
Yeah. So
Or
I've been with Tape Room and Warner the whole time. So
Okay.
coming on 7 years now.
Wow.
I think we're in my 7th year, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty wild to like look back at like, oh dang.
All that's happened.
Yeah.
The ups and downs.
It feels like forever ago, but then it feels like yesterday sometimes too. So
absolutely. What was your decision process? Like you talked about, you had all these different, you kind of started having meetings or whatever. Was there anything in particular that made you want to end up at Tape Room Warner Chappell, or was it just sort of like that felt right, or like what was it?
It was a combination of things. Well, yeah, it felt right. Like Ashley was there, but at the time it was just Ashley. So it was like he had like 4 writers and then him. There was no staff, no nothing.
Okay.
So Warner was kind of doing the bulk of the work. But I remember I called my dad and I was like, hey, I got, I think I ended up getting like 4 or 5 offers, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, and I had told him that I'd had some meetings with Ashley. And he was like, well, whatever he offers you, just take it.
That's the one.
He was like, doesn't like just to be in that circle is like, just do it. And so I was like, all right, cool. And I didn't tell Ashley that, but
yeah, that's not a good negotiating tactic.
Good negotiating tactic. No, but yeah. And I mean, he's like the king of country music. So it's kind of like, why would you not go there?
Yeah.
And mainly my whole thing was like, I just want to learn.
Yeah.
And that was one kind of the perspective I have, which I think has helped. It definitely helped me like get a deal, but it's just like, it doesn't matter how far down the road you are, there's still something else you can learn. And like,
yeah, always be a student.
Yeah. And if you're like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room kind of thing.
Yeah.
That whole scenario. So yeah, but yeah, they've grown the company and it's rocking now. So
yeah,
I'm just happy to not be fired yet at this point.
Happy to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We probably met for the first time, in like 2016, 2017?
I think we signed within like 6 months of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause we had the same publisher for a while. One of them.
because I remember
Will Overton at
Will,
Warner
yeah,
Chapel.
Will was like, "Hey man, we just signed this guy from Texas." I was like, "Cool, book it." Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what his name is. Like, go for
Texas Mafia, baby.
it. That was when like the Georgia boys were taking over.
I know. I couldn't stand that.
I know. So,
yeah, we've written a lot of songs together over the years, I feel like.
what, like 6-7 years worth, probably.
Yeah, yeah. But you had kind of your first, I guess, like, well, I don't know. To me, from the outside looking in, your first like big break was Up Down with Morgan Wallen and FGL. Is that accurate? Was that
That
kind of
was
the
my
first one?
first cut ever.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. How did that?
So that was.
How did that come about?
Okay, so we had written the song. So I met Hardy. Hardy was like my first co-write that had ever been like show up, don't know who you're writing with, like, hey, nice to meet you, let's write a song, kind of a co-write. Laura, what's her name now? Alexander.
Okay.
Set us up. And she was like, oh yeah, we got this new guy, Hardy. Like, you should write with him. I was like, okay, I'm just looking for any writes anywhere, you know? And so like we sat down and we wrote, and it was like, you know, we clicked or whatever. He's a country boy, he's small town, whatever. So
yeah,
we just kind of became buds, and we'd write every couple of months. He had a deal at the time and I didn't. So it was like, yeah, man, I'm booked out like 2.5 months. I'm like, all right, let's get one more, you know?
Yeah,
so they were kind of spread out a little bit, but yeah, he hit me up one day and he was like, hey, riding with my, like, you mind if I pull my buddy CJ in? So CJ Solar, who he was actually playing bass for CJ at the time, I believe.
Hardy was playing bass for CJ. Wow.
And so, yeah, so we all showed up and wrote. We didn't even actually finish the song that day because I had to go valet cars. So we got like first verse, chorus. And then I went to valet cars, and then we just never, it took a while. Like, we never really got back together on it. Like, we kind of texted about it a few times, but this was like the part of my story where like I was getting meetings every now and then. They're like, hey man, like, send me more songs.
Yeah.
And, you know, only writing like 1, maybe 2 days a week. And then some weeks would get busy. I wouldn't write at all because I was working or whatever, just didn't have it right, you know?
Right.
And so I was like digging through old voice notes, and I was like, oh, so I like kind of sketched out like a second verse and did a little demo thing, and I sent it to the guys, and then Hardy was like, oh man, yeah. And then like emails like, what if we do this and this? And so we kind of emailed back and forth on it 3 or 4 times until we got like the final product.
Oh, so you never really got back in the room?
Oh,
wow.
Not for that song.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so that was like, and that was kind of the one song during those meetings. Everybody was like, I really like this song. That's pretty cool, you know? And so that was one everybody kept referencing. Anyway, so we wrote the song. And then, I mean, it was probably 1.5 years later, went down to Key West Songwriters Festival, and we've been wanting to get it to, I was like, man, this would be like the perfect FGL song.
Yeah.
We could just get it to those guys, you know? And for some reason or another, it just never really happened. And so I'm playing a little songwriters round at Key West, and I see Seth England walk in, who's their manager at the time. And I was like, man, I'm just going to play this song. And so like I played it, like not even sure if he's even paying attention or not.
Yeah.
And like played it, and then felt my phone buzz in my pocket after I finished. And I look, and he had texted me and he said, hey man, you got a demo for that song? And I was like, yep. So like it was just me and another girl, and she's up there singing, and I'm like texting him, like trying to hide that I'm on my phone.
During the round?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, send him the demo. He like, I see him like put his headphones in and walks to the back of the bar. Then he like texted me. And so I like play another song. I check my phone, and he's like, cool, man, is it available? And I was like, yeah, it is. I'm like, here we go. And he's like, cool, man, who'd you write with this? So I sent him all the info. And then afterwards he was like, yeah, man, like, love the song. He's like, we got this new artist we're working with. I was like, oh man, like, all right, like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, Hardy's about to play. Let's go watch him play. And so it was like right down the street. And so we went down there, and first song Hardy plays was Up Down for his, and he didn't know any of this yet.
Oh, wow.
And so like that was the first song he played.
Yeah.
And so he was like, oh my gosh. In which he played it 10 times better than I did. And so he was like, I love this song. And so it was kind of like, all right, here we go. And So anyways, yeah, we get back. Because at the time, I don't think Morgan had actually released a song yet. Maybe he had The Way I Talk out.
Okay.
I don't remember.
But he was like just starting.
But it was like fresh.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was like, let's go. And Seth was like, we just need one more party song for the record. Like,
yeah.
I was like, got a cut. Let's rock and roll. Let's go Key West, you know?
Yeah.
And then it just blew up after that once they got it recorded. And
wow.
Then FGL featured on it. So kind of got our wish.
That's pretty incredible. Is the, I don't know if you're aware, but like the demo of Up Down is like sort of like local, like songwriter legend lore.
So that was the one that Hardy did.
Okay. The one that's like on
I think him and Jake Mitchell did one like garage band, like auto,
like with the don't
yeah,
the like the synth bass part. Okay.
That one, and that was the one everybody got a hold of too.
Gotcha.
So the one I did was like a cheesy whatever.
Well, I think it's like listening to that demo is like crazy because you're like, how did this become this? You know. But
it's wild.
It is wild.
The fact that they could hear through that is just beyond me.
I mean, that's Nashville. That's what they mean when a publisher or an A&R person at a label says we can hear through a demo. Like I feel like that's never true,
right, yeah.
Except when it is.
Yeah.
So it
probably helps that they heard the acoustic versions first.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
And you're like, no, trust me, it's cool.
Was that the first time that I guess you sort of knew Seth? Just, I mean, if he was texting you or whatever. But
I had known him just through my dad.
Okay.
So, like, we were acquaintances. Like, we had never hung out before.
Yeah.
But I'm not even sure if I had his number or if he got it from somebody.
Gotcha.
And then texted me.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I
got his number now, though. I'm just... No.
Yeah, just sending him demos all the time. And did that... When that song came out, was it like pretty immediate that you were like, oh, this is going to be a thing?
That was one of like the few songs that like, when I heard it, I was like, oh man, I got to try not to cry right now. Because this is like it just sounded so good. Well, and like I was like, I don't know what it's going to sound like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and they were like, man, we're going to do like this Skinnerd style, like, and they freaking rocked it.
Yeah.
So,
man, I remember when that song came out, I was driving my wife to the airport and I listened to it. And like at that time I was so new to my journey. Like, you know, as you go on with your career in Nashville, like you learn how to like actually be happy for people.
Yeah.
But it is sort of an acquired skill because at first when it's hitting for somebody, you're jealous because you want it to hit for you.
Yeah.
And I remember like listening to that. I dropped her off, and I like remember leaving the airport circle or whatever, and listening to it and being like, "Damn it, it's really good."
Yeah.
Like I just knew it was an absolute
like jealousy
monster.
and admiration all
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's obviously an incredible song, and it's kind of a staple of Morgan's career now. And
thank you. Yeah.
Launched a few careers. Honestly,
I I'm like I got lucky falling into that room that day. So
yeah, but that's you play the game long enough, you get lucky, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah, that's how it works.
So
it's always the thing that like you don't expect, but I think there's a testament to like grinding it out sometimes.
Well,
with the song, and,
yeah.
And you know, I mean, you don't hear a lot of those stories. Like we finished it over email, and you know, it became this thing.
Well, and that's one thing I like to tell like young songwriters. Not that I'm like an old songwriter. Like I feel like I'm still just like trying to get my foot in the door most days. But
yeah,
like it's like don't forget about the good songs, because just because somebody doesn't cut it right away doesn't mean that it's not a great song. Because like when we wrote that song, Morgan didn't have a deal. He wasn't, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it had to like work its way to him and or vice versa. I don't know.
Yeah. The timing had to be right.
Yeah. It's like just because the song doesn't get cut, like the artist may not even be in town yet, you know?
Yeah.
Or the moment might not be right for it. Maybe it's a little too progressive.
Sure.
for what you're doing, or, how things come back in cycles. Maybe it's too country right now, but then it's or it's too pop. And,
It'll come back around.
yeah, here in a couple of years, things kind of, it goes back and forth. I feel like it's like a game of Pong.
Yeah. And you never can, I've never successfully chased a trend really. Right.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, I just try and do me.
You just got to do your own thing.
But yeah, it is important to not forget the ones that haven't happened yet. Cause I've got I've got a folder of songs that I know are great and just haven't for whatever reason. And I've switched publishers. So I've kind of got I joke to myself or my wife or my new publisher. I'm like, yeah, I've got all these other songs at this other building, and I just go by every now and again and yell down the well.
Dust them off.
Yeah, see how they're doing. They're still hanging in there.
You got to pitch those yourselves probably, huh?
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, I'll just cut them myself one day or
just
something.
Don't forget them, yeah.
Yeah, we've got that one, Still Hanging On by a String. I love that song.
Still hanging on.
Listen to it all the time. All the time. When it went number one, what did you feel? What did it feel like? Did you feel excited, relief, dread?
It was like super exciting. I'm like, there's like that post-hit depression that hits if you don't have another song coming. Because I remember at the number one party, it was like me and CJ and Hardy were all kind of sitting there, and they're like, oh, like what other songs do you have out right now? And I was like, I don't have any. And CJ kind of looked at me. He was like, yeah. And then Hardy's like, oh, I got this song and this song and this song. And I was like, man, but he's like a genius. So
yeah,
he was destined for
the
bright lights. You know what I mean? So I was just like, oh, dang, like we got to get going. Like, and it's kind of a kick in the butt, but also, and like you sort of fall victim to like oh yeah, like I'm a good songwriter.
Yeah.
Even if you try not to. And it's like, I've probably gotten a lot of rooms way earlier than I should have just because of that. And it's like, I was young and excited.
Yeah.
But I mean, it literally changed my life. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not mad at it at all. Super thankful for it.
Yeah.
But no, it was, dream come true, really.
Absolutely. It's like one of those things where it's like you kind of got to climb the mountain again, which is always daunting, right?
Yeah. It's like once you roll back down the other side and you're like, oh, that's a long ways up there.
Again, yeah.
Because that's like, you don't realize how many things it's like you have to write a great song. Somebody has to like it. And then the label has to like it. And then it has to make the record. And then it has to get picked as a single. And then it has to work at radio. And then it has the stars, like not only do you have to like work hard and get lucky, then the stars have to align. Like it's after you write the song, really, it's out of your control.
Yes.
And that's the worst part is like, you're just like, well.
Yeah. But you just keep trying.
Just got to let go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But it can be very, I don't know. Disheartening is not the right word, but it's just tough.
It's stressful.
It's a tough business.
Yeah. Especially if you're a control freak. Which.
Are you?
No, I wouldn't say I'm a control freak, but I feel like I worry more than I should about things that I can't control.
Yeah.
But it's like,
relatable.
Yeah. Relatable. You're just like, well, is it the single or not?
Yeah.
Because you get those calls like, oh man, like it's between this song and this other song. And it's like, don't even tell me.
I don't
now that's all I'm going to think about until I find out. And then, but yeah, so like that's what I've been doing like the last like year or two. It's just like doing my best to not think about anything other than like, what am I going to do today? Like, what song am I going to write today? And
what am I going to do in the room? And
like getting ideas and thinking, and even like still going through old songs and be like, oh, this would be great for so-and-so. And like, and then that's it. Just like, shut the door and not think about it again.
Sure. What kind of stuff do you do? Like, how do you, I'm always interested in hearing how people find their ideas. Do you do a lot of prep work on the weekends in your free time or whatever to prepare for writes? Like how prepared do you like to be going into a room?
I like to have at least like a couple of titles, like at the very least have 3 or 4 titles most days. And if I'm like super prepared, which I'm not always, but
sure.
Like, I have a start or 2.
Yeah.
Like verse, chorus, or at least a melody or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And you might be the same way, but like feel like they come in waves. Like there will be like a week where I'll get like 20 ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go like 2 weeks and not think of like one idea.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so I don't know. I used to go out looking for ideas, and then I would get stressed when I couldn't like think of one. I'd be like, today's my idea day. I'm gonna come up with as many ideas as I can.
Yeah.
And then it would either I would not find any, or they would all be terrible because they were like forced trying to like like the best thing I think I can do is just like always have like your ears on in a way of like listening, whether you're like watching TV or like reading a book or talking to people or whatever, even listening to other songs, like, ooh, I love what they did there with that melody, or like whatever, like just always trying to find something that like inspires you. And then I always think, I'm like, how can I make that country?
Right.
It's like, love that. How do we make it a country song? You know?
Yeah. How do we put it in that packaging?
Yeah. And so that's because I don't necessarily have a ton of free time these days.
Yeah.
So not because I'm super popular. It's because we have kids and they're take up a lot of time.
Stuff's important, man.
Yeah. So listening to Coco Melon all day does not usually inspire
yeah, I feel that.
A country song. So
yeah, I try and do the same thing with like getting ideas and stuff. Like I've just realized you do it long enough. I think I'm like 7-something years in at this point into the Nashville game or whatever. But it's like, it is like you said, I don't think if I try and go, oh, I'm going to think of ideas, it doesn't work.
It's like trying to fall in love. It's like, I'm going to fall in love this week.
Yeah. Like you kind of got to be not looking for it.
As soon as you stop looking, that's when you'll find it.
Yeah. But just keeping the ears open. And it does seem, I have this concept of I think of like songwriting as like the muse. Mm-hmm. And the muse is like some magical creature. Yeah. And I always try and like honor the muse. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like maybe this is a weird way of thinking about it, but I feel like the muse always finds me. It like knows when I need its help. Yeah. You know? And so when I'm running low on ideas, as long as I don't stress, I go on a walk or something, it starts to flow.
Fills the tank back
It does. Up. And like living my life is where I always find ideas. It's never because I sat down at my desk and was like, I'm going to find 3 titles today.
Oh, man.
It's because I went to dinner with my wife, or I went on a trip and, you know, somebody in the seat next to you says something to the person they're traveling with. And you're like, oh, man, that's a good idea. Yeah. Got to write that one down. Yeah. But it's, it can be scary when you're running low on ideas, especially when I was first starting, because it was this fear of, is this as good? Did I already write all the good ideas I had and now it's over? But so far that hasn't been true. So far, you always think you're out and then another one comes along. I found like for me, like if I'm just in like the right mindset, like, you know, it's like you can just make anything a song. Yeah. It's like guy sitting in a chair, you know, or make it country. Girl sitting in a chair. There you go. You know that? It's already a country song. Yeah, girl sitting in a chair. I walked up. I said, hey, da-da-da-da-da, this. Yeah. Out of nowhere, just a girl sitting in a chair. There you go. You're just spitting poetry. Boom, write that down now. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. But it's like, and the more stressed you are, the harder it is. Yeah. But it's so hard not to be stressed some days. How do you find that it's hard to balance, like being a family man and trying to be creative and trying to show up to rights, and then also how do you prioritize like writing with some rights are a no-brainer? Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, this is an artist over here, or this is a big hit writer that I'm writing with. But how do you kind of, because I feel like you're someone that's always like down to take a chance on like a new artist, or whatever. Do you think that's because of the way that you've had success in the past, or is that just part of your journey? From the way I haven't had success, because they're like, hey, you want to write with this guy? I'm like, nah. And then they blow up and they're like, hey, can we get it right? And they're like, nope. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, say yes to everything. That's what somebody told me. Yeah. They're like, try everything once, maybe even twice. Yeah. And it's like, because you never know. But also like, I know like with you, like we just write great songs. So it's like, right. Okay, whatever. Even if
new guy over here doesn't know what they're doing or whatever, like
Yeah.
I know that we can still probably get a really good song out of it.
Yeah, you can always kind of figure
or
it
if
out.
nothing else, it's just going to be a good hang. So it's like those are hard to come by
Yeah.
some days. So it's like
The hang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, why not try it? Also, I know it's cliche, but someone's like, yeah, somebody took a chance on me when I was younger. So it's like,
That's right.
but it's like, you never know. Also, like I find the new guys that haven't had their brains like squished into the box of like what is a hit song and what isn't a hit song.
Yeah.
They like do the stuff that's like out here outside of the box, and then it's like, oh, and then you can kind of pull it back in.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's really fun.
That's what makes it. It's how you get like that cool, fresh, new, whatever sound or verbiage or whatever it is that makes it.
Yeah.
Every now and then you're like, oh wow, okay, let's do that again because that was really unique and fresh or whatever. So it's like you never know who's going to bring it in or who's going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
Or what's going to be huge, you know? How did you how did the like Kenny Chesney thing happen?
That's a funny story, sort of. So I think I'd actually gotten canceled on that day.
Okay.
That's why I always look for a right too, because this was the day I think I got canceled on, and I don't remember if we were getting a vocal or what, but I'd hit up Graylin James, one of my buddies, and I was like, "Hey, just hitting him about something random." He's like, "Oh, who you writing with today?" I was like, "Nobody. I got canceled on." He's like, "Come hop in with me and Brock and Jamie."
Yeah.
I love Brock and Jamie. I was like, "Awesome, yeah." So we did that, and yeah. So the song happened, and then Jamie was the one. He was like maybe like 2 drinks deep at the bar, maybe when we got the demo back. This was a story he told me, so he can correct me.
Okay.
And he was like, and we had talked, we were like, this feels like Chesney. So,
yeah.
And Jamie has Chesney's number. And so Jamie was like, I got the demo back and just sent it. Didn't even listen to it. Just shot it over to him.
Wow.
And then he was like, probably 2 hours later, he's like, I forgot it. He's like, I got a call from like a blocked number. And he's just like, hello? And he's like, hey man, it's Kenny. Love that song you sent. And he was like, oh shoot. Like, he was like, man, what are y'all saying in that bridge there? He's like, I don't know. I'll listen to it and call you back. He's like, I hadn't even listened to the song yet.
Oh my God.
And so, so that's how he got it. And then, man, we ended up rewriting the second verse and the bridge, like 3 or 4. He was like, hey, I don't like this line. Can you like give me a few options on it? And so we did. And Sean said, all right, now hit this one. And I mean, it was probably like a 2-week process of like every other day getting together to fix a verse or a line or whatever.
Oh, wow. Was that like stressful, like trying to get it right? Because you're
like, well,
you're so close at that point.
Because we thought, like, when we're like, yeah, like that's it. And then he's like, I don't really like that line. And I think it might have been the whole bridge he didn't like, And it's like, well, okay, well, what do we say? Like, so we would, do like a party idea, like is like try and give him like 3 different, like very different options, but that all still fit in that same line, and he'd be like, oh yeah, option 1. Okay. Option 2 right here, And it was like, which I'd never been in that situation before where it's like, and we're trying to like, cause he was like cutting the next week or something. So we're like trying to get it done quick and make, it's just like, and then you're just sitting there waiting,
Yeah.
Did he like it? Did he not like it?
Yeah. And he's not texting back right away or whatever.
Yeah. So the best text was like, love it. You got it, buddy. Or whatever. He sent it back to Jamie. And I was like, oh.
And then did you know pretty much right away that it was going to happen?
Nope. Then he had to wait. I mean, I think they ended up not cutting it that round. It was like 6 weeks before they finally cut it. Yeah. But that was, that's still pretty quick and like songwriter.
It is, but when I've been in that situation where they're cutting 2 rounds and they say they're going to cut it and then they don't cut it the first round.
And then it doesn't make the next one. Yeah.
Well, or I just had a situation where I was sweating bullets for a month.
Ooh.
And then it turned out that they had cut it the first time. And I didn't even.
Gotcha.
So I was,
Gotcha.
Just stressed out for nothing. So it all worked out.
We had a guy cut a song once, cut it. They're like, man, love it. And then like 3 days later, they wanted to sing the vocal. And like, just never heard anything back on it. And like 2 weeks later, we like hit him, like, hey, like, everything go good with that song? Or like, oh, like we didn't like the way his voice sounded on it, so we scrapped it. And I was like,
Pain.
thanks for letting us know, guys.
Pain.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Then somebody else cut it, so it was fine.
Okay. There you go.
But I mean, but it was like a year later.
Wow.
It wasn't like a quick thing.
Yeah. But that's the ups and downs of the music business, man.
Lots of downs.
Yeah.
Lots more downs than ups.
It beats you up pretty good.
Yeah.
What is something, if you were starting over, what advice would you give yourself to some young buck just starting out on their journey?
Just like, don't give up.
Yeah.
Just keep writing and like do your thing. Don't try and sound like everybody else or whatever's cool. Just like do your thing and be confident in like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if they don't like you for you, they're not going to like you for trying to sound like somebody else.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And just like, I don't know, be nice to everybody. There's no sense in trying to be mean to people.
Yeah.
Or like, you know,
be a good hang.
Yeah.
Do you find that like kind of, I mean, I feel like you're kind of a part of a few different crews, songwriting crews, you know? Do you attribute that to like being from here? Kind of. I know you're not from here. I know you're from Texas, but I don't know, like how do you think about that at all? Or
it's funny because like when I think back to like even high school and stuff, like I had like, you know, one or two like really good friends, a couple of really good friends, but also like I felt like I could jump into like every little friend group, like the band guys and then like the football guys and then like the skateboard mountain biking guys. Like I feel like I've always kind of been like that. But even like in music, like I feel like I can get along with just about anybody.
Yeah.
And
you're a pretty likable guy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
My wife would disagree sometimes. No, I'm joking. But like even in music though, you see some people just kind of get cornered in like one little, whether it's a group or in one little like style of music or whatever. And it's kind of like, that's definitely not a bad thing. I would love to be in the hip pocket of an artist and crank out like 5 number ones with them. You know what I mean? Like if any artists are needing a guy in their hip pocket, let me know. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, I like to do all different kinds, you know, even within country, there's like the pop country, there's the traditional country, there's like still the bro country a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then there's just like the sad country song, you know, it's like there are different types of country within country.
Yeah.
And I kind of like to do a little bit of everything. I probably lean more on the traditional side, but like I love doing that. Also, I like writing with different people as opposed to just writing with the same kind of 5 or 6 people all the time. I like spreading it out and just kind of rotating through and just keeping it fresh. You don't ever feel like you get stuck in a rut and you get to see everybody because like there are people, it's funny like how small this town is, but you can go a year without seeing somebody like that. And you're just like, holy cow, when's the last time I saw you? You know what I mean? So it's like the only time you get to hang out with people, some of these people is when you're in the room with them. And so it's like, hey, let's make sure, just keep the rotation fresh, you know?
Yeah. That makes sense.
But yeah.
Do you worry too much about like trying to like establish, this is my brand as a songwriter or anything like that? Or do you just not even worry about it?
No, I don't even care.
Yeah.
I just want people to want to write with me.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, so the purpose of this is like, it's called 10-Year Town, but it's for people. I want this to be something for when people move to town or they're just starting on their journey. It's like, well, here's a bunch of different stories of people starting from, nothing and building it into a career. And, I think it's important for people to realize that like there is no one path. There's not like one playbook and everybody's story is different. You're very like relaxed, go with the flow guy. And we've had people on that are very intense and they both work.
Oh yeah.
But I think what I always encourage people to do is to focus on what works for them and also like what's sustainable for you to do for years, as opposed to you don't want to be someone that you're not.
Yeah.
You know, so if you don't really like writing a certain style of music and then all of a sudden that's what you did because you thought that was popular or that was your highest chance of success, you know, that can actually kind of like end up wasting a lot of your time because it's like you're walking over there when you're supposed to be walking over here.
Yeah.
But like I've always admired that you have just sort of a very like relaxed, calming demeanor about you. That
it's not always relaxed on the inside. As long as it comes out that way, I guess.
It does. Okay. It does. Always a pleasure to be around.
Well, thank you. You too. I know. Oh man, I had a thought and it's gone now. Oh yeah. So like, try and figure out what your strengths are, whether it's melodies, ideas, lyrics, tracks, whether you're like a producer, whatever, like, and like focus on that. But also like one thing that my dad told me, and that's my story is a little bit different just because I had him to like reference, like he would always say like, try and be like a Swiss Army knife because like, okay, cool. You're great with lyrics and melodies, but there's a lyric and melody guy and an artist, but they need a track guy. It's like, okay, well I can do the track today. Or like, oh, we got a lyric guy, we just need melodies. Okay, well I can do melody, you know, and it's like focus on what you do well and work on that, but also like be able to shift and do whatever you need to be in the room because every day is different. And you'll just be able to kind of slip into whatever slot needs to be filled. And
I love that.
Yeah. So that was like some pretty good advice early on, I would say.
Yeah. Be flexible.
Yeah. Be flexible. Be ready. Just, yeah. And also I'm like, there's no stupid lines. So like when I was in college, one thing I did learn in grad school was they were like brainstorming. We did like a paper on brainstorming and why brainstorming is what it is. And it's like, you're not supposed to just say something like smart or something that will help. It's like you say whatever is on your mind, because I could say like, we're thinking song ideas. I could say like green candle and you could be like, oh, green car. And then I could be like, oh, old green car. And then you could be like, oh yeah, I had this one title that was you like, and it like, it gets you to where down the road.
Ping pong.
It's like we never would have gotten down the road if I hadn't started. So it's like, you know, even if it's dumb, like still like throw ideas out and throw lines out and like, because it can help you get to where you're going to be. And I'm always like, the worst thing you can do is sit in a room and say nothing.
Yes. There's nothing worse.
Even if you have like, you're running 90 miles an hour in your head, if you don't say anything, then people are going to be like, what are you doing, man? Yeah. Like,
yeah. So, why are you here if you're not saying anything at all?
So, and you know, don't talk too much, but like, nobody likes that. No, I'm joking.
No. Dude, that's so true. Like just the, I don't know, the ability to be in a room and sort of not be afraid to sound dumb. Yeah. I think that can be, I know, especially when I was just getting started early on and I would be writing with, you know, I had a record deal. So they were throwing me into rooms that I had absolutely no business being in, you know, from a writing standpoint. These people have written so many hit songs and I've written, you know, zero at that point, especially. And I like, when I look back on it, it's like, I wish I would have appreciated it more, that the opportunity that I was being given. And I wish I wouldn't have been so timid. Yeah. Because I was like kind of freaked out. I was like, well, these guys know what they're doing and I don't have a clue.
It's easy to get like that.
Yeah. But then you realize like nobody really knows what they're doing. Yeah. So
it's like, you have to be confident, but also like trust that they know what they're doing too. So it's that give and take. And it's like, okay, I really like this line right here or this melody, but they're saying, this other guy or girl is saying like, it should be this way. It's like, okay, cool. Either let's compromise or like, you know, you've had way more hits than me, so let's just roll with it. Like, you know, And, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out, but a lot of times it does.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, you can't control it after you leave the room. So
Yeah. Make sure it's right before you, no.
Well, I mean, I don't even know at this point, some of the songs that I have, I'm like, is this song ever going to get cut? And then one day you get a call out of the blue and it did get cut. So you really don't ever know.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't ever know when you're just going to be playing around in Key West and
I know.
it's going to happen that way, you know? So there's a lot of different ways that it can happen for you.
Oh yeah. That's probably the craziest way, I think.
Yeah, but
that's happened.
But I hear a lot of these stories and it's always something crazy
really?
like that. It's never like, oh yeah, I wrote it on a Tuesday and my publisher pitched it and 6 months later it got cut. I mean, sometimes it is, but mostly it's something
nowadays
kind of out of the blue, you know? Or no, I don't know if that was out of the blue, but it was serendipitous, you know?
We had the quickest turnaround I've had has been like on an earnest song, probably. It was like 2 weeks.
Really? From when you wrote it?
And then they cut it like 2 weeks.
Which one was that?
It was Miss That Girl and Unhang the Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Which that was funny. Like, if you're talking about serendipitous, I hadn't written with him and it had been a couple years.
Yeah.
And he called me one day. It was like, I was like noon. I was in a riot and I was like, why is he calling me? So I pick up the phone. I walked out. I was like, hey, man. He goes, did you just walk into a U-Haul? I said, nope, I did not. He goes, okay, never mind. I'm going to turn back around then. He said, I was going to come say hey to you. And I was like, what are you doing? And we just started talking. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to come to your Huntsville show or whatever. He's like, you're coming? He said, why don't you just come out on the bus with me instead?
Wow.
He was like, we just write that week. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, those cuts and those songs all came from him not seeing me walk into a U-Haul. And it's like.
Yeah. And that was like you hadn't written in a few years. And it was like,
which we were old buddies. Like, we hung out like pre-deal, like moving furniture together and stuff like that. Like, I've known him since he's best friends with Mitchell's little brother. And so when we were in college, they were like in high school, like trying to get in the studio. We were in there and we were like, go back. No. You know? Yeah. So it's like, you know, I've known him since he was probably like 15.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like,
you never know.
It's just crazy where life takes you.
Yeah, it is. But the relationships are the whole, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the whole game.
Yeah.
It's just keeping up with people as best you can and understanding sometimes you can't, sometimes you got to let it go for a little bit. But stuff tends to come back around.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, I don't get too worked up if someone's on my calendar for a little bit. It's like, well, it'll come back around.
Life is long.
And I'm always like, I would rather maintain the friendship than like force a work relationship. I don't know. If in like a weird way, it's like,
absolutely.
At the end of the day, with most of these people, if we don't ever write another song together again, that's totally fine. Like with like my buddies, you know, it's like, I would rather be friends with you than if we had to pick one, just being friends or just writing songs together. It's like,
choose the friendship.
We can find songs somewhere else. You can't find friends somewhere else.
Dude, that's so true.
I don't know.
No, that's incredible. Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. That's it. That's the pod. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of 10 Year Town. We're doing a Q&A episode at the end of the month. So if you have a question for us, go to 10yeartown.com and click on the Q&A button to submit your questions. We also drop new interview clips throughout the week on all our social channels, so follow 10 Year Town on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple and Spotify podcasts to get all new episodes every Tuesday. We'll see you next week.